Hi, mentors. This is the overview of Meeting 3, Frogs and Toads for Winter 2025. So let's solve puzzles about frogs and toads that slide and jump. And these puzzles are quite simple in the way that are phrased, so they're very easy to understand, but there's so many variations and different ways to tackle them that it makes it really interesting. So it's a very low ceiling and high floor in the sense that kids will right away jump and start moving and doing things, but then it can really scale up for complexity. And you can do like really awesome things if you keep going. Also, it's important to know that we'll make an effort that the students get this skill of explaining puzzles because they're going to take it home to other families and also probably to their schools. So we'll talk more about it in the coaching week. So for the agenda, there's two parts, the frog puzzles part, which is the big main part, 35 minutes or so. So let's help the frogs and toads to get to their sides they want by moving them one by one. And then after the break, we just go beyond in deeper explorations, but also we test how students are understanding the puzzles in terms of how they can explain it to others. So we make a very conscious effort into teaching kids how to explain the puzzle, not the solutions, but the puzzle itself. So the rules and the order in which they would explain it, what to say, what not to say, don't give it away. So all these tips. Again, during coaching, we'll talk more in depth about that. So let's break it down. First, frog challenges breaks into three parts. First, we have a notice and wonder, in which mentors and students, they just take a look at this diagram. It has three animals here, and then an empty lily pad here. What do you notice and what do you wonder? This is a natural way to introduce the activity without just giving the rules, but more opening up curiosity so that the brains of the students start wondering, okay, what could happen, making sense themselves. So that activates curiosity. And then when you explain the rules, there will be listening more to you rather than just start with the actual rules. It's also a nice way to see what students could come up with in terms of rules or intentions, right? The motivations of the frogs and the toads. They could also maybe generalize and try to claim that maybe there are more frogs and toads, which will be the case when we extend this puzzle to more animals, etc. After the notice and wonder, we go with the main puzzle, the main situation, which is 3 frogs and 3 toads, and that's about 15 minutes. So we solve the 3 and 3 case. We also can go down a little bit to the 2 and 2 case, not just because students are not understanding, but also as a way to check that we could also restrict. So it's also important. It's also useful, even if you already solved the 3 and 3 case. And then we challenge students without solving without moving backwards, just moving forward for the frogs and forward for the toads without undoing. Take a look at this second part here. How would it be? So it's essentially this page in the student workbook where you introduce the puzzle. A lot of reading comprehension here, of course. So you connect this notice and wonder with explaining verbally the rules. And then you can actually read them and students can read about them. So there's just 2 moves here, sliding 1 and jump of 2. Note that frogs and toads don't need to take turns. So you can just move an animal and then move another animal, whether it's a frog again or a toad, doesn't matter. Finally, for this part 1, we go to variations. And these 15 minutes here and 15 minutes here are pretty flexible. So you could do 15, 15, but you could also do maybe 10 and 20 if go fast here. Or if you go maybe slower, you could do 20 or so and just 10 minutes here and even move to part 2 with more variations. But this is all very organic and flexible these times. So because it's an exploration activity, right? So you have to go with what your students give you. You cannot really cut and predict that you're gonna have this set time for this. It just evolves and flows. You're just trying to push your students. That's your main goal. So for variations, we do 3 things mainly, the 4 and 4 or more, a challenge version, and then you could fill an algebraic table, but that's more for the most advanced students. So we'll have a challenge page in our meeting for that. Take a look at this slide that would explain these variations. So there's 4 variations at least, and students could also come up with one. The first is no undo. So just to make sure that students can solve it without moving backward. So no undoing steps. And again, this also, you started it here, right? But here you make it more explicit and you actually share if the students were able to do it. You could also compare the solution of a group with another solution and see that there's not too much to do. And so a lot of generality, you could say things that you always have to start with this move or this move. You always have to go through this interweaving. You're always going to end up almost as this or this in terms of the states. So you start noticing that there's not much flexibility. You have to always kind of go through the same moves in these types of puzzles. 8 animals or even 10 animals. And here we're not explaining what's the initial setup. So that's for students to deduce, right? To make sense. But let's just tell what it is. We would just put 1 more animal here, 1 more animal here. And a final challenge that we would suggest, it's super frogs and super toads. Toads, you're still sliding +1, but now you jump +3. So you would be doing not from here to here, but from here to here. So jump over 2 animals, meaning moving 3 spaces in total. Anticipates kids to maybe say things like, what if we leave 2 spaces in the middle? Or what if we have 3 frogs, but only 2 toads? Or is there a configuration in which we get stuck and are unable to move, even assuming that we can move backward? So something that cannot really undo. Why or why not? And those are interesting puzzles or things that students could say. So that's part 1 before the break. All this exploration, starting with the notice and wonder, and then go with the 3x3 and 3, and then opening up to more challenges. Part 2, going beyond, has 2 parts. Deeper exploration, so you keep exploring, and here it's more about sharing solutions. So if you couldn't explore much in part 1, just keep exploring, of course. If you really did a lot of exploration in part 1, here you can keep exploring a little bit, but also share solutions and start just making all solutions available to all the students because they work in groups. So this would be great if you get to that. And final 10 minutes or so, you would practice how to introduce the puzzle. So students would practice explaining the puzzles, not the solutions, but the puzzles. Mentors would give feedback, and then they would all discuss useful tips for how to successfully present the activities, how to remember not to give away the answers as well, which is very tempting, also for mentors, of course. But then this would put students in great position to explain to their families, to other students in their school, to other teachers, friends. So just make this bigger, right? Make this activity extended, right? Not just in Math CEO. That's kind of the spirit, but we're just teaching you how to teach this cool math to anyone you really want. So we're trying to build little seeds of math teachers, so to speak. So that's the meeting right there. We'll also include this page in the workbook because even if we have great manipulatives like really little frogs, we've noticed that some people really like to write with these symbols, FFTT, right, for frogs and toads, and maybe make here the sequence of moves or so. So this is just for anything that you really want to do with the students, the last page in the student workbook. Anyway, that's it. Have fun and see you in another video. Goodbye.